it's your girl Tara coming to you from thecraftsergeants.com. Thanks for joining me for another video tutorial. Today I wanted to hop on here to share with you guys another project of inspiration using the classic sponging technique. So I recently did a video on how to create a sponge technique using our basic pattern stencils, and so I wanted to hop on here again and share with you guys another project. And these two projects came from a special request from one of my customers, and I demonstrated both of these cards for my Stampin' Sundays with the Craft Sergeant over on Facebook Live, and that happens every single Sunday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So if you guys are, you know, not doing anything or not busy and you want something to watch, head on over. I always have some awesome inspiration for you guys. But the card that I recently created was this beautiful card here, and this is where I used our basic pattern mask over a sponged backgroround. But for that video, I actually didn't sponge the background. I used my brayers, so we did a little bit of brayer work / ink blending. So that was a lot of fun. So I wanted to share with you guys the other card that I created for that particular live, and this one is just straight up sponging, okay, and it's using our masks. So let me go ahead and get started and tell you guys what I used to create these cards, and I am hoping that you guys will take the time out and experiment with your stencils to create some beautiful cards as well. All right, so starting out, I am using a piece of Thick Whisper White cardstock. So this is my card base. It's an A2 size card. I'm also using a piece of Rich Razzleberry and a piece of regular Whisper White. Now, one thing that I have found is I prefer to use the regular Whisper White when I'm doing blending over the Thick Whisper White because it's more smooth, and I love the effect that I get. I mean, you can kind of get the same effect a little bit, but I feel like the ink lays on the regular Whisper White cardstock better than it does the Thick Whisper White. So there's that. So this is just a regular piece. I'm also using for inks the following colors in the combination are Rich Razzleberry, Mango Melody, and Balmy Blue. I have 3 of my sponges here, and then for the mask or the stencil that I'm going to be using is this little guy right here. It's so pretty, and I am so happy that this is carrying over into the new into our new annual catalog that's going to launch on the 3rd. Now, just so you're aware, I think I mentioned this in my last video, the basic pattern decorative masks are masks that kind of go hand in hand with the embossing paste. However, you don't have to use the embossing paste with them. You can use regular inks as well, which is great. So they're very versatile, a versatile tool that comes in handy when you're creating cards. And this comes with 4. So this is 1 out of the 4. And the other 3, did I put them back in here? Oh, no, I didn't put them back in here. The other 3 are these little guys here. This is a really pretty one. Okay, so this is a very unique, kind of like a flourish, medieval type stencil, which is really pretty. This one is the one that I did on the previous card, which I love it. It's kind of like a leaf. Looks like a fancy floral leaf. And then we have the trees, which could be kind of spooky, or for fall, you know, or for a rainforest. Like, I mean, I guess the possibilities are endless depending on what you're trying to create. So those are all 4 of the masks that come in that pack. If you're wondering where you can find these tools at in our catalog, if you turn to page 181, so let's head on over there. This is 181, and this is where you can find all of the additional like coloring tools. So I know kind of prior before that you have like the Stampin' blends, the pigment inks, you have like the watercolor pencils and stuff. But on this side you can find, or on these 2 pages here, you can find like the spritzers, the Wink Stellas, the paints. And right here you can see the section of the different types of sponging tools that you can use that Stampin' Up offers. So they have brayers, which we used on the previous card. They have sponge daubers, which I've used a lot. for different types of effects. And then of course we got the Stampin' sponges here. And as you notice, the sponge actually comes in a round circle. So this is what it looks like when it's whole. You get a total of 3 and it's $4. So it's a very cost effective way to sponge. And what I like to do is I like to cut, and this is not my idea. I actually got this idea, I forgot where, like it's like all over like people who have like different like tips and tricks. But I've seen where people, instead of coloring with one sponge, which is the whole sponge, they cut it in sections. So I cut mine in 4s, and then what I like to do is I like to place a piece of cardstock of the color that I'm using on the sponge and staple it to it. So I cut it in 4s, so it's kind of like a little triangle. Kind of reminds me of a little piece of cheese, and that way I can grab the color that coordinates with the ink that I'm using, because I'm lazy. I'm not gonna lie, you don't have to do that, but I am lazy. I don't feel like washing out my sponges, because you can, so I would prefer to have one for each color, so I don't have to worry about all that. So there's that. So that's kind of like a cool little tip that I learned over the years. All right, so now what you're going to need to create this particular card. So I told you guys the inks. I told you what kind of cardstock we're going to be using. For embellishments, I didn't tell you guys that yet. We're going to be using some of the black glittered organdy ribbon. I love this ribbon. This is one of my favorites. But just be mindful, like it does shed, just FYI. So if you're not the glitter type of person, you might not like this ribbon because it does shed a little bit. But I love it because it's so pretty. For the sentiment, you can use any sentiment that you have in your stash, but I am going to be using a sentiment from the Colorful Seasons, which is what I used on the prior card. And for this particular one here, I'm using the You Make Me Smile sentiment because I love it. The stamp set is great. Comes with a total of 24 stamps, so it's a pretty decent size set, and it is still available, okay? So all of the supplies that I'm listing off right now, I have them linked down in the description box below. But this is a great seasonal set. Like you have images for every single season, which is what makes this a great addition to your stash. Okay, so there's that. And of course, for the sentiment here, I am going to be doing a little bit of heat embossing. So of course I'm going to have like my Versamark, my embossing buddy, my black powder, that good stuff, and then any kind of dimensionals adhesive that you want to use on the card. This is a really simple card and it's easy to make up. So let's go ahead and let me stop talking and let's get stamping. All right, so I am going to lay down a piece of paper, scrap paper, just so I can protect my work surface, okay? And I find that this process can get a little messy. So you'll want to make sure that you cover your work surface anytime you're doing any kind of stenciling or ink blending, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my piece of Whisper White cardstock, and then I'm going to take my stencil and I'm going to place this kind of like off center over my cardstock, just like this. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a little bit of tape and I'm going to take this little thing down, so that way as I'm blending, I don't have to worry about my stencil lifting or shifting in the process, and then I end up getting like the double lines, or it doesn't end up blending the way I want it to. So I'm just gonna place 3 pieces of tape on here just like that, and it also kind of helps the paper stay in place too. All right, so now what we're gonna do is we're going to begin our blending. So I'm gonna start with the darkest color and work my way out to the lightest color. So the first color I'm using is Rich Razzleberry, which as you can see here is gonna be in the center. Then I moved on to Balmy Blue, and then I moved on to Mango Melody. Now the cool thing about this, the sponging technique for this, is that when the colors touch each other, they mix to create a different color, which is really pretty. I love it, okay? So like I said, we're gonna start off with our Rich Razzleberry, okay? And then I'm going to just dab my sponge over my ink pad. And then one thing you wanna do, you don't wanna just apply your sponge, especially when you're starting. You don't wanna apply the sponge straight to your project because you'll end up with like really harsh lines. And I don't want harsh lines because then I'll be mad. So I kind of do a little bit of testing off to the side of my paper. Now, if this was something that I had, like the image coming from this, just like moving the image or blending the image from like the side, then I would actually continue my my circles or my motion over the cardstock as I'm like right off the paper. But because I'm starting in the middle of this circle here, I'm not gonna do that. So I'm gonna just kind of blend a little bit of that ink into the sponge, and then I'm gonna come over with a light hand, and I am going to begin to, in a circular motion, color the center of this medallion, just like this. And the thing to remember is the more ink that you put on your sponge, the more darker your color is going to be, the more saturated it's going to be, okay? And so I'm using a really light hand as well, but I did initially put a lot of ink on my sponge at first, and I kind of want that because I want it darker in the center. But you notice I don't have as much ink, and I'm not pressing as hard around because I want it to blend out and I want it to be noticeable. All right, so that's the rich raspberry. So let's go ahead and move to our next color, which is going to be the balmy blue. So I'm going to take my balmy blue here, and then I'm going to just ink up my sponge a little bit, kind of work some of that ink into my sponge, and then I'm going to work it around that next level. I'll make sure it's super noticeable because it's already blending into that rich raspberry. It's already doing it, y'all. It's already doing it. There we go. Really, really pretty. Yep, just keep blending in until I get the color that I want. There we go. All right, and now I'm going to close this little guy up, and then I'm going to take my Mango Melody, okay, and it's going to be the same exact process. So I'm going to take my sponge, dab a little bit, kind of working that ink into my sponge, and then I'm going to go around the outside of this circle, just like that. Now for this part, I do want a lot of this yellow to be really dark at the points of this medallion. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to really saturate my sponge with that ink and kind of like concentrate on those points, just so I can make it a little darker, just like that. Okay, there we go. All right, so here you have it. We are done. So we're going to close up our ink just like that, and then I'm going to lift this little guy up, and we're going to, there we go. Isn't that gorgeous? Gorgeous. Remove it from underneath that mask. All right, so let's move this out of the way. Now, here's a part that something that I learned when it comes to heat embossing. And I know I've mentioned this a couple of times in previous videos, but if this is your first time watching me emboss anything, I want to let you guys know. So I have this little tool called an embossing buddy. Now what this does is it creates, it has powder in it, and what that does is when you coat or treat your paper or your cardstock with it, it won't allow the powder to go in places where you don't want it. So one thing that I've learned in the past is that a lot of times when you lay down a lot of ink, even though Stampin' Up! Inks dry pretty fast, sometimes it still takes a little minute for it to dry. And so I don't want to risk it when I'm pouring my powder over it. So what I do is I like to treat the whole image with my embossing buddy. And what this does is it just takes away the wetness of the image, okay? And then I'm just treating it with the cardstock just like that. So now when I go to stamp my sentiment in Versamark, I don't have to worry about my powder going in over the ink and then messing up my image, okay? So this is like a really nifty tool and something that I would say it would be like a necessity in your stash. especially if you love heat embossing. All right, so now I'm gonna take my Versamark ink, which is a watermark stamp pad. So it takes a little long to dry, which is why it's great for embossing. And I am going to take my sentiment, "You Make Me Smile," and I'm gonna ink this little guy up. And then, oop, I almost forgot, because this is a photopolymer stamp, I'm going to need my embossing, or my foam mat. Anytime you're using photopolymer, it's always great to have some sort of foam underneath your project, so that way you can get a crisp, clean image. Because if not, you always run the risk of it not stamping correctly, because there is not an even amount of pressure. All right, so now I'm going to take this little guy, and we're gonna coat it in our black embossing powder, which is going to be really missed because we used to sell this and we don't anymore. It is no longer available. Stampin' Up. It's kind of sad. I hope they bring it back. Maybe one day. I feel like black is a staple. All right, so there we go. So you see how perfectly coated that is, and I don't have any stray powder on my project. It's great. So now what we're going to do is we're going to use our heat tool. We're going to blast this little guy and heat it up and set our powder, meaning it will be shining when we're done. So let me go ahead and heat this up. All right, there we go. And it is super shiny. All right, we're gonna kind of like sit this to the side and let it kind of dry a little bit because I don't want to risk smearing it. Sometimes that happens. All right, so while we're waiting for that, just give it a couple of seconds to kind of set in. We're going to go ahead and assemble our card base. So the first thing I'm gonna do is burnish the edge of my card. Then I'm gonna take some adhesive and we're gonna glue our stamped piece on here onto our piece of retrazzle berry, just like this. Let me make sure it's not, I want to make sure I'm not gonna smear it. It's good. See, I always get a little nervous. All right, the good thing about our glue is that I love Tombow because it gives you that a little bit of lead time, so you can kind of manipulate your card and reposition it, slide it into place if you didn't put it in the right place. I love it. All right, so now before we attach this little guy to our card base, you're gonna wanna flip it over, and this is where we're going to assemble, or not assemble, but we're going to apply our ribbon. Now, if you've been following me for a while, or you know me personally, you guys know I'm not a fan of like bows and knots and tying them on the card. So I always cheat. So I always take, I have a lot of tape in my room. So I always take like a piece of tape and then I wrap my ribbon around my card, just like this. But I don't do it all the way and try to tie it because nobody ain't got time for that. So now I'm gonna take this little piece of tape here and I'm gonna tape this in right to that card base. See how easy that was? Boom, there we go. Now I'm gonna go ahead and pop this little guy up on my card base, just like this. Really, really easy card. So pretty too. Okay, if you want to put one in the center, you can. And I'm just gonna go ahead and line this little guy up. Make sure it's even on all sides. We're gonna try to get this as straight as possible. There we go, just like that. All right, and then we're going to create a knot, because that's what this is. This is not a bow. I mean, you could tie a bow if you want to, but I made this a little simple. So all I did, because I'm right-handed, I just took a little bit of this, oops, I'm about to making a lot of noise. I'm just gonna take a little piece of this ribbon, and I'm just gonna tie it kind of like how you tie your shoes. The cool thing about this is like I can move it up and down if I didn't put it in the right spot. There we go. And I'm gonna play around with it just like that. Boop. There we go. And then I'm gonna just trim off these ends just like that. Boom. There we go. And there is our beautiful card. Isn't that gorgeous? I love this card. It's so pretty. And so let's bring the rest of them in. And here they are. Gorgeous. All right, guys, so I hope you enjoyed the projects that we created today. I think they are so beautiful. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. If you like this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up. And let me know in the comments also, like, if you've tried this technique, because I would love to know, because it's really fun. If you are a beginner stamper and you're looking for something new, or you're a casual stamper and you've never tried this before, I highly encourage this sponging technique. It's really easy and it's pretty cost efficient. You know, all you need is some sponges and a couple of stencils, and maybe not even stencils, just some cardstock, and you're off. And just to experiment with different kinds of color combinations and stuff. I would love to know if you guys have tried it or if you are thinking about trying it. So there's that. If you liked any of the supplies that I used today on these projects, I have links down in the description box below that'll take you straight over to my online store. Don't forget, we also have the last chance products posted. So if there's something that you have been eyeing for a while and you haven't, you know, you've been kind of debating whether or not you should get it, go ahead and add it to your cart and check out, because after the new catalog launches on the 3rd of June, a lot of those items will no longer be available. So I don't want you guys to miss out. And speaking of purchasing, I would love to be your demonstrator. If you don't have one, don't forget to use the host code. If your order is less than $150, if it's over $150, don't use the code, because then you qualify for Stampin' rewards. But other than that, that's all I got for you guys for now. So hopefully you enjoyed this. So see you guys next time. Thanks for watching, and happy stamping.